Well, thank you for joining us this evening for this Oregon State Board of Agriculture meeting. Today is Tuesday, December 17th, 2024. This is Elin Miller. Oh, that's much better. Thank you. This is Elin Miller, Chair of the Board. This meeting is now called to order. I'd like to begin by asking Department of Agriculture Board Coordinator Carla Valnes to review a few housekeeping items for this evening.
Good evening. Just a reminder to please mute your phones or computer audio during the call to prevent any unnecessary background noise. We also request that only board members and presenters turn on their camera during the call. And if you are joining the call online, pre-meeting materials are posted on the ODA website at oda.direct/board-agriculture, or information will be posted after the meeting. And just a reminder, this meeting is being recorded.
Thank you, Carla. Carla, will you please call the roll for introductions, and I'll begin. Elin Miller, Farmer, Douglas County.
Chad Allen.
Chad Allen, Jerry Minnesota.
Barbara Boyer.
Barbara Boyer, Farmer, Yamhill County.
Brian Harper is absent this evening. Ty Kluwer.
Ty Cleaver, Klamath Falls, hand cattle producer.
Miguel Lopez.
Miguel Lopez, Great River, Willamette Valley.
Ellie Norris.
Norris Farmer, Douglas County.
Eric Orem.
Good evening, Eric Orem, Farmer, Hefner.
Luisa Santa Maria is absent this evening. Josh Zielinski.
Josh Zielinski, Nurseryman, Salem, Oregon.
Dean Simonich.
Stacy Simonich, Dean of the OSU's College of Agricultural Sciences and Director of the Oregon Agricultural Experiment Station.
Director Sharplo Hansen.
Good evening, Lisa Sharplo Hansen, Director of the Department of Agriculture.
And my name is Carla Valnes with the Department of Agriculture. Just a reminder to please use the chat box if you're online to sign in, so we have a record of attendance. Also, we will be monitoring the chat box for technical issues only, and would appreciate no chatting between board members and guests attending in the chat. We'll go around the room quickly for introductions.
Alana Kennedy, Farmer in the Willamette Valley.
Peter Kennedy, Farmer. Dave Rowe, retired seafood. Booze.
Lucy Ames, Oregon Department of
Agriculture.
Agriculture. Sunny?
Sunny Summers, Oregon Department of Ag.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you in the corner.
Oh, you're fine. Laura Passage, Department of Ag. Chris Benton, Oregon Department of Ag.
Casey Prentice, Oregon Department of Ag.
Rusty Rock, Oregon Department of Ag.
James Wachowski, Director of the Coastal Oregon Marine Experiment Station.
I'm Judy Anderson. I'm a guest and an observer.
All right. And we have a couple other folks walk in. If you could just introduce yourselves real quick. Sorry.
Hey, everybody. My name is Marcus Hims. I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Coast Visitors Association. We're appointed by the State Tourism Commission as the regional destination management organization for the Oregon coast.
Great, thank you. All right. We are really pleased that we are here in Newport and have a chance to chat with folks about an area that we regulate. And we are really anxious to learn more about it for those of us who may be in other commodities and not necessarily looking at seafood. One of the interesting things is the Oregon Department of Agriculture actually has 22 commissions. And Director Sharplo Hansen has the opportunity to basically look at 60 to 70 different individuals that she may appoint in any given years to all these commissions. So the commissions are a really important part of what we do. In 1943, the first commission was formed, and that was dairy. And the latest commission, the most recent commission was 2021, and that was the hemp commission. So that gives you a little context, but we have 3 commissions with us tonight, the Oregon Trawl Commission, Oregon Crab Commission, and then joining us virtually is Erica Carlson with the Oregon Albacore Commission and the Oregon Salmon Commission. So why don't I just go ahead and turn it over. I don't know which one of you would like to go first. Okay, Elena, and go ahead and introduce yourself, and we can go ahead and begin. We have quite a bit of time here, probably another 60 minutes, so to be able to have a good conversation.
Okay, I'm going to start my timer. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me well? My name is Elena Novak. I'm the director of the Oregon Trawl Commission. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present here today. Our commission represents, it's the most diverse of the 4 seafood commodity commissions. We represent 3 fisheries. It's the Oregon pink shrimp, Pacific whiting, and the bottom trawl and midwater trawl groundfish fishery. I personally am an ODA alumni, so it's super nice to see everybody here today, many familiar faces. I am currently serving on the advisory committee for the Commodity Commission Oversight Program, as well as the Coastal Oregon Marine Experiment Station, and I'm the president of Positively Groundfish. It's a nonprofit organization that our industry and our partners started to promote the groundfish products. I will talk a little bit about our industry and a little bit about the issues we're facing, and also some opportunities. So the 3 fisheries that I mentioned, we have more than 10 commercially harvested species. Some of our favorites: Oregon pink shrimp, various rockfish, Dover sole, petrale sole, sablefish, also Pacific whiting, the highest biomass species of the West Coast. We use trawl gear, which is essentially nets, wide open nets that are being moved through the water column or above the seabed to scoop the fish or shrimp. Our sector is technically considered a large scale sector. And while it is, in the grand scheme of things, it's artisanal fishery. It's really mom and pop operations. That's across the Oregon commercial fishing industries. Many local businesses, many multi-generational businesses. The trawl sector is a very important economic driver on the Oregon coast. In 2024, our 3 fisheries collectively produced $62 million in fishermen's value alone, and also harvested more than 400 million pounds of sustainable, healthy seafood of various kinds. This year, pink shrimp fishery performed very well despite the El Nino, which is a warm current in the water, and shrimp typically does not like the warm water, and despite that, we had very strong landings at 50 million pounds with almost $27 million in fishermen's revenue. Whiting is, as I said, it's the highest biomass single species fishery of the West Coast, and Oregon harvests the most of it in our sector. And the landing's a little bit down. It's cyclical fishery, like many other fisheries, possibly due to environmental conditions, warmer water. But there is a bit of dip in our landings at 135 million pounds. It's still a substantial, of course, year, with roughly $15 million in fishermen's ex-vessel value. Groundfish, various species, rockfish, Dover, petrale, sablefish, unfortunately, across all species, value and volume is down. And the large reason is the markets. We're just having very hard time competing with imports, and after the COVID pandemic, food service and restaurants, many of those spots shut down, as I'm sure you've heard from many other industries. So we are impacted. Our fisheries represent 60–70% of Oregon's total commercial harvests. And we together, collectively, commercial fishing in Oregon is a very substantial producer of animal protein. We are one of the larger, the second after the livestock. So in any situation, in unfortunate, God forbid, but if there is ever a situation that the global supply chains are disrupted and we are seeking to be self-reliant in Oregon, you can rely on our industry. If boats have the fuel to put in the boats and go fish, and if the seafood plants are open, then we can feed Oregon. You know, with livestock, it takes a lot of processing to really boil it down to something that individuals can consume. With fish, it's different. So it requires, relatively speaking, minimum processing, and it's readily available to Oregonians and beyond. Our sector, trawl, is the backbone of the commercial fishing industry in Oregon. We support the year-round processing and fishing infrastructure that all other fisheries, including the smaller seasonal fisheries, depend on. Also, the recreational fisheries depend, of course, on the fishing infrastructure supported by the fishing fleet. So it's really an ecosystem of interdependent components. Our industry has an exceptional track record in the sustainability and stewardship efforts. All our 3 fisheries certified against the most rigorous standard in seafood sustainability, the Marine Stewardship Council, including Oregon pink shrimp, is the first shrimp fishery in the world to ever achieve this certification. We have it since 2007. Roundfish fishery has 18 certified species, and it's considered the most diverse and complex fishery ever been under the MSC, Marine Stewardship Council certification. So we're very proud of it. In the previous, you probably all have heard, and I'm sorry, I'm looking at my phone for only one reason, to check my timer. I'm still good. Over the last couple of years, offshore wind energy issue was, it was very active, and our fishery and industry, and many in our fishing industry, have been active, and we demonstrated how much we are ready to protect the marine environment and defend it. Unfortunately, with that development, the environmental criteria was not as winning criteria as opposed to the wind speed and the money that is involved. And so our industry was very, and remains very concerned about that development. And so we are grateful to Governor Kotek for supporting the Oregon to develop our own way of approach and plan offshore wind. So we are very supportive of that. Some of the issues that our industry currently is facing, probably the most immediate concern is the Department of Environmental Quality and our wastewater permitting issues. I am not directly involved, only more in the backup and support for the West Coast Seafood Processor Association. Lori Steele has been the champion behind that initiative. And the concern is very real. So essentially, very briefly, there is no technology in existence anywhere in the world to achieve the requirements that DEQ is putting on our industry. They want us to remove the heavy metals from the water. We didn't put heavy metals in the water. We don't use heavy metals in the production. So the water that we use, water from the city, there are already heavy metals there. DEQ is okay for drinking purpose, it's okay, but it's not okay to put it in the estuary. So they want us to remove those heavy metals from the water that we didn't cause. It's very interesting. As I said, the technology does not currently exist. It already has costed our processors tremendous millions and millions of dollars that being expended already to basically meet the DQ requirements. Unattainable, some of the requirements are absolutely unattainable. And for example, the current issue is the fecal issue. So because there are seagulls that poop, pardon my French, on the dock, and so that's technically considered that our processing is a fecal source, but is it? It's seagulls. So we're really struggling right now with DQ recognizing that and working with us. And I will give the agency due credit. They have been working with the West Coast Seafood Processors Association, meeting bi-weekly and coming up with public reports and trying to resolve these issues. But some of these issues are still not being resolved. So I just want to put it out for you, for your awareness, that if processors go, fishermen go. It's that simple. It's ecosystem. Our fishermen are legally required to deliver their catch to permitted first receivers. Well, seafood processors are the permitted first receivers, and they have to offload the entire catch in basically one landing. And we are talking about tremendous amount of the catches in our child sector. It could go more than 100,000 pounds at a time. When it's a whiting vessel, it could be more than 200,000 pounds at a time. And the processor has to be willing to buy it all at once. So it's very important to have processors in Oregon. Without them, there will be no industry. Same goes to fishermen. Without fishermen, there will be no industry. The other issue is difficulties to compete with imported seafood. U.S. Imported last year $25 billion worth of edible seafood into our country. And so meanwhile, we have Dover sole fishery. We are living on an annual basis, give or take, 100 million pounds of Dover sole stays in the water every year off West Coast because there's no market. Really? There's no market? We're importing $25 billion worth of seafood. Well, the problem is it's really hard to compete for American, domestic, 100% American seafood. It's just a challenge to compete. So this is very concerning. And the other issue is the escalating costs for boats, for processors, while our X vessel, which is the boat price of farm gate equivalent, stay at best the same. At worst, many prices are back to the 80s. For example, Oregon pink shrimp is really a good example of where the price, actually we're going backwards and we're back to the 80s level. It's just really hard to compete with cheap imported equivalent farmed prawns, probably full of antibiotics and who knows what else. But in the marketplace, $1 difference is a big difference, and so we are not winning that game with them. And also the fees keep growing, harder to do the business. We understand, at the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, they had to increase the various fees to the fishing fleet on commercial licenses and permits. And also the per pound ad valorem went up on a whole bunch of different species. We understand there is the cost of living increases, there's the collective bargaining, and it's completely out of the agency's hands. But the bottom line, our fees are going up and our prices are not going up. And so it's as simple as that. And it's the same goes for ODA fees increases. We understand completely, and we appreciate this agency so much for everything you guys do. But the bottom line, unless our economics is going up in the next 10 years, we will be probably back to the same conversation, but worse. So I just want to put it out there for your awareness. Specific to commissions, we have challenged recruiting commissioners, as for various reasons. It's just volunteers. It's hard. It takes a lot with changes in the public meeting law. We are restricted in how much we can interact, how much they can interact. Everything is a meeting, including special meeting. And it's just very challenging, to get commissioners, to find commissioner. We have one opening for months and it still is an opening, and sometimes it's hard to get quorum when that happens. So whatever we can do to support commissioners in their job, in their duty, volunteer duty, I would welcome that. The opportunity for our industry, as we see, the largest one is developing the domestic market now. And so we need help with that. And, in seafood, there is no cooperator besides ASME, Alaska Seafood Marketing Institute. And, ASME is all about Alaska. So we appreciate all the efforts that the Market Access Program does and support from ODA on that. So there is a great need for more domestic marketing funding and work in the world of seafood, because we don't have many access to many grants, because USDA doesn't really recognize wild seafood as part of the food systems. And so we don't have many grant options. What terrestrial foods and producers have, we have very limited options in that regard. And I wanna wrap it up and just say thank you. Thank you to the agency. It's ODA as being the alumni before this job. I worked at the Market Access Program. It's very near and dear my heart. I absolutely love the mission statement. I think the agency does a lot of great things to elevate our Oregon food and agriculture sectors, and maybe sometimes those sectors don't fully appreciate it, but I want to recognize and again express my gratitude for what the agency does. I want to specifically call out the efforts of Eric Garman from the Market Access Program. He has been absolutely amazing resource for the Oregon seafood industry. He has been doing a tremendous job elevating and building awareness for our products and our industry overseas, and got some great traction in Europe. And we are just very, very grateful for that work. And thank you, Lisa, for supporting Market Access's work. This is it, again, as I said, we don't have many grant options domestic. So this is it. Market Access is it for us, and we are just grateful. We very much like Eric Morris. He was a great hire. We really enjoy working with him, and thank you for his efforts as well. Thank you for the time. I am grateful for the opportunity, and I welcome any questions.
He did? He did. Seen him.
Hi, Dave.
Maybe what we can do is have, go ahead with Crystal. Let's have our presentations, and then at the end we can have Q&A for the whole group. So Crystal, if you could.
So we put together a presentation. It's got some of our ads that we've done this current year, some in the past, and then a little bit about the commission for some that don't know. We will mirror quite a bit of what Yelena has talked about. So we won't have to go over some things because a lot of the things are similar. We will have a few additions. A lot of our concerns have to do with offshore land, which Lori and Susan keep up on very much, as well as Heather.
Midwater Trawlers Cooperative.
Midwater Trawlers Cooperative. So between them, they keep up on it pretty well. We are searching again for MSC certification. We were certified in 2017 when we gave it up, and then it really wasn't something we were interested in using. We weren't using it in the most of the processors in the industry, and we're looking to go to the EU also with a lot of other fisheries now, and that's kind of a requirement. So we're looking to get MSC certified. Unfortunately, we have to have another state on board to be able to do that in lieu of stock assessment. So we're trying to gain Washington or California with us. That's one of the things that we're trying to do with the Oregon Indigenous Craft Commission. Funding is a problem for the commission. We were hoping to have a meeting with one of the senators yesterday, which we had to swap because of the line marking regulations that we're looking at for the whale entanglement issues that we've been working through. It's going to be very costly, and a lot of fishermen don't understand how to get grant funding, where to look for grant funding, and where that money can either come from or go through. That's going to be a struggle for a lot of people. You're talking, between $5,000 and $50,000 per vessel for some owners just to mark their line so that when a whale's entangled, somebody can point a finger at somebody to say who did it when it's already done. It's going to be a struggle for a lot of people to keep in business. It's a lot of issues, and it's already hard enough. They're just starting their year, which is hopefully going to be a great year. They just started this morning at 9 a.m. or yesterday morning at 9 a.m. So that's good. But DEQ is another one of the things with the water quality systems that are an issue. Not just heavy metals, but marine is an issue. That's one of the things that, there's a limit on chlorine. You're not expected to put back a certain limit of chlorine. We bring in more chlorine than we're allowed to put out from the water system. Like the county puts in more than you're allowed to put out. I mean, I don't know how they expect you to take it out when they put it in there. But our bays tourists don't even like fishing or crabbing in our bays because there's no fish or crab in them anymore. There's no food in it. It's terrible. I mean, what we're doing I think it's wrong. And hopefully we can find a way to realize that we're not hurting them, harming them by not putting our product back in there. It's not garbage, it's product, it's feed that we're not putting in there. And what we were doing was putting good, fresh feed back in the bays, not garbage, not heavy metals and chlorine. It was product that was fresh and not garbage. But plants have shut down. You've lost hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs. You've lost fisheries already. You've moved out entire fisheries out of ports. It's been terrible watching it happen over the last few years. You've watched Pacific shut down in Charleston. You've watched Bornstein shut down in Newport. Crescent City, Eureka, up and down the West Coast, plants are shutting down because of EPA issues. It's ridiculous. The water issues. So people are struggling, and it's not just crab, it's not just fish, it's not just shrimp, it's the fisheries issue, and that means less fish plants, less boats, less money for Oregon. The fecal part, seagulls, I don't know if you've ever seen a seal poop, but it's a lot. Seagulls are small animals. Seals are big animals, and it's even worse. So you're not just fighting, product that comes from a fishery, fighting everything when they test water. There are a lot of animals in the water, and they test water. So, what they think that they're finding in the water, they're pointing fingers at fisheries, and it's not what they think they're finding, and it's a shame that they can shut down a fisheries for something that they don't take into account. Those are some of the things that we're having issues with that are really going to affect our industry. And trawl is the biggest volume, crab is the biggest value, $90 million. So it's a little bit of money that comes into the community each year. That's the first landing. Spent 5 times over every season. It's a lot of money. And it goes into a community over and over again. It's going to disappear if something's not done. Help us, help you. My presentation is just a quick slideshow. Explains what we are, what we do, and then shows just a few slides on what we've done in the last few years. And then will it be automatic? Will it just run through or is there a, okay. So this first slide, this is Louis. For those of you that don't know, we have call the Crab Commission. We have 3 sizes, where small, medium, and large, around 10 feet, 20 feet, and 30 feet-ish. The 10-footers, 10-foot wide. They do come with pumps. They do have to run all the time. They are electric, and we have them for fundraisers, nonprofits, things like that. You can't rent them for a birthday party. Don't jump on them. They're just for picture time, stuff like that. But we use them for promotional items, any kind of seafood festival. So if you're having any kind of seafood event, give us a call. We try to get them there and back free of charge. If it was going somewhere crazy, you'd have to pay for the shipping. Next slide, please. This is a recipe that Chef Leif Benson, he is one of our commissioners, came up with. This is the crab focaccia with pesto and I messed up the cheese, Gruyere cheese. This was on a cooking show that was done on a Portland channel. I don't know the news channel, but he does a lot of shows up in Portland. He has a home there, and it's a wonderful recipe. There's a new one coming out this year, and you can find all of these recipes on our website, which is OregonDungeness.org, and there are commercials that go with them. So if you want to watch it, there are recipes on our site, the show's on our site, the link's on our site. So if you're interested in it, go check it out. It does a really wonderful job, and they'll be coming out. Actually, they're probably out now because we just started our season, so you'll be seeing them randomly on TV shows everywhere, and you'll be hearing it on the radio. You won't be able to get away from it. Next slide, please. As you know, we're one of 22 commissions. Started here with the ODA. Started in 1947. There are 4 of us. We are 100% fully funded by our fishermen, a 1% tax. Between $350,000 and $950,000 a year is what comes into our budget, depending on the season. 5 2-in-1, which is 5 fishers, 2 processors, and 1 public member. Our public members currently, Chef Leif Benson was 30 years chef at Timberline Lodge, and most of you know him because he does a ton of OBA events. I believe he's on the Potato Commission, and he's an amazing cook. I love when he does events because we get to eat his food. We are obviously just like most of the commissions for marketing, research, and education. Next slide. This is just a few shots of some of the events that we've done. Most of these pictures that are up there, Hugh has done. He does such a great job of doing the setups for the shows. He makes these crab sections look amazing, and then he puts like gelatin on them. And they will literally look this shiny and pretty for a week. If you want to eat them, I do not suggest it, but they are beautiful forever. The bottom picture is Crab Louie with the sunglasses. We are having him repaired now. He cost, I believe, about $40,000 when he was new. To get him replaced was around $90,000. So we're going to have him repaired instead with a sewing needle. And so, but he'll still be great, and we'll finally have the crab back with the cool sunglasses. So we haven't had them in a long time, but that'll give us 2 of the larger crabs, which are right around 30 to 40 feet. And they look phenomenal on top of a building or a boat and are really great for fundraising events. Next slide. This is a video, if you can play it. It does have sound if there's sound attached. This is a video. There's 2, one will be later and it'll have a little talking. That one's just a little sound bite to show the music. The next slide is our last season. This is the numbers breakdown. Mixed ports is on the bottom. We don't do individual ports just so that it's not showing, if there's less than a few buyers, we don't show individual buyers in a port. So mixed ports is kind of everybody lumped together that's not a larger port with more than 3 buyers in it. So the total last year was 24.6 million pounds. Value was $93.6 million. It was a pretty good last year's season. The year before that was the second largest in history, which was the 32.5 million pound season, which was pretty phenomenal. However, the value was fairly low for the volume, which is generally how it goes. The starting price this year is between $4 and $6. That's processing to live price. Usually means there's not a huge volume of crab out there. So let's cross our fingers for more than a couple of loads of crab. But that's a highest starting price in history. We just started delivering this morning. So next slide is just a historical data. You probably can't see it with this slide. Like Yelena said, a cyclical fisheries, it's going to have its ups and downs, and it kind of runs its cycle, and it drops back down, and then it starts to creep back up. Next slide. So conservation-minded gear regulations. Oregon Dungeness crabbers prioritize conservation through stringent gear regulations, including the use of escape rings that allow undersized males and females to escape from the traps, as well as biodegradable components that prevent ghost fishing by releasing traps if popped or lost. Their commitment to sustainability is further demonstrated by initiatives to recover derelict gear, which helps protect marine life and maintain the health of crab populations for future generations. We have a gear retrieval program that's in season that the Crab Commission does. Also, ODF&W has a post-season retrieval program. So when May starts and they go to a 20% pot reduction, we have a gear retrieval program. Anything outside of 40 fathoms, which is where they assume the whales are going to start swimming, we go and we retrieve gear in season. And then after the season is ending, ODF&W will do a gear retrieval program for anything that's out there, just to try to make sure that there are no entanglements and the gear's not being left out. We go over that program every single year to see if there's any way to make it better, any way to make it change, any way to get more pots, anything that we can do, to get more gear out of the water. Next slide. Targeting harvest method. Targeting harvest method is just the using the round pots. They've essentially tried to make better gear for every fishery year after year, just trying to make it better and better. Pots haven't changed for decades, and they probably won't. They've pretty much got it down. There's not much, that they can change, and they think that they've got it down pretty good. It'll probably stay this way for a very long time. Run on a 3S management system of size, season, and sex. So size being only mature male crabs, 6 1/4 and above, can be harvested. Next slide. Season, or does it start with sex? For sex, only male crabs can be retained. Any female crabs are released unharmed. As long as they release them at the time, they should have low mortality rate. Next slide. And season. Annual harvest begins on December 1st and closes August 14th. Fishing is timed to protect soft-shelled crab and always done in and out by testing protocol for meat quality. Next slide, the escape ring. The escape rings serve 2 primary purposes: to allow undersized male crabs to exit the pot and to permit female crabs to escape, ensuring they can continue the productive cycle. Each pot must have a minimum of 2 escape rings, 4¼ inches, and they have to be located on the top, upper half, and the sides of the pot. Also, the next slide. They have biodegradable cotton that must be on the top and the side of the pot so that they can degrade after 2 weeks, so that if the pot's lost, there's also a hole after 2 weeks so that they can escape if the pot's lost. That's for all crab, not just the smaller undersized crabs. Next slide. 1996, we went to a limited entry program, ensuring that there would never be more than 450 fishers. Currently, we're down to 433 permits in Oregon, and only 425 were fished 2 years ago. I don't know the numbers for last year. 419 last I checked. But there will never be more than 433 active pots in Oregon, although there are still 450 there. They can't fish 400. Next slide. That's just some gear hanging out before it gets started. Next slide. Summer trip limits. Summer trip limits went into effect, and then the season closure date. Summer trip limits change each year, and they change during the year. Sometimes it's 1,000 pounds per week. Sometimes it's 1,200. It depends on what's going on during the year, but they'll change the time and the date and the pounds depending on what they're seeing with the crab. And that's for bay seasons. Next slide. Preseason testing. This isn't an x-ray of a crab because we're testing for mercury or anything. That's not a thing. This is just a fun slide because we like cool pictures. We do preseason testing, but it's not for mercury, but they have tested for mercury and there's none in there. We do preseason testing before for quality, also for Demoic, and make sure that the crab is of good quality and that there's no biotoxins in there prior to opening. Next slide. This is one of the crab picking rooms prior to a crab season. Next slide. This is the crab harvest area map. And it shows where the domoic acid cutoff zones would be for buffer zones. There are the 2 maps. Some people don't know there's 2 maps, one of the areas and then one for the buffer zones so that we can break it down a little further in case. 2 more. Next slide. This is the one of these state managed fisheries, which is nice. We'd like to keep it that way. Next slide. We have been doing a lot more events for children, like the ODA or the Department of Ag Roundup in Salem. Next slide. We started when we became the official state crustacean, being voted in by one of the Salem children's 5th grade classes, I believe. Next slide is at the Heathman, which is an event that we do some of the promotional events in Portland, trying to do some outreach with some of the restaurants. I think that is it. Next slide. That's it. That's it.
Great. Thank you. All right, Erica, are you on the line?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you great.
Great. All right. Hi, I'm Erica Carlson from the Oregon Albacore Commission and Oregon Salmon Commission. And yes, just echoing Yelena and Crystal, saying thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today and talk about two of my favorite things, albacore and salmon. So do you have my slides ready? All right, you ready for me, Carla?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, so yeah, next slide, please. Echoing a lot of what you've heard before, but we are industry funded with the ex-vessel value. We have 9 commissioners. They are fishermen, processors, and buyers, and 1 public member. And we focus really on education, research, communications, and promotion. And really our ultimate goal is to serve the commercial fishing industry by supporting and engaging in activities and research programs that benefit production, harvesting, handling, processing, marketing, and ultimate use of Oregon albacore and salmon to really increase opportunities for profitability. And as you've heard from my colleagues, the economic viability of our fleet and processors is really key right now with both with the graying of the fleet and also plant closures and consolidations. I am a lifelong Oregonian, and every time I go out to the coast and think of the fleet, reducing and reducing and reducing, I can't even envision not having that coastal community out there. So this is really important work right now that I'm thrilled to be a part of. Next slide. So this is a video that's just a little introductory video. It's 3 minutes to tell you a little bit about the albacore fleet.
The fleet is a few hundred boats to several hundred boats. Most of them are in the range of 30 to 60 feet long. Virtually every one of them, with a very few exceptions, are family-owned businesses. Many of them are multi-generational businesses. Lots of them are whole families on boats, or different parts of families on boats. This is kind of the epitome of an all-American small business, in 52 feet. We'll get up on the flying bridge and we'll use binoculars to try to locate ourselves in an area where there are a lot of birds, because the birds seem to know better than we do where the fish are. At certain times, huge balls of bait will come up to the surface. Anchovies is something we see a lot of, and the albacore will be below the surface and at the surface, keeping this ball of bait confined in a small area, and many times they'll eat that bait ball down to the last fish. Well, when they're doing that, they're in a feeding frenzy, and that's where we move in and take advantage of their feeding frenzy and hope that they are so excited about eating that they'll bite our plastic lure. Each fish will average from 12 to 20 pounds. It's important for everybody to know that Oregon caught albacore are caught one at a time by hook and line by hand. We use no nets. And that's something that we are all very proud of in the albacore fishery. And the fish is washed and pre-chilled sometimes put directly into ice or pre-chilled. The idea is we all try to get the fish cold as soon as possible. In the micro-cannery process, we take younger fish, we put them in a can raw, we cook them one time in the can. Everything that was in the fish, all of the goodness is in the can. Eat everything in the can. You don't throw away anything. You don't have to squeeze the lid of the can down and drain half of the can down the sink. Everything that was in the fish is now in the can. Eat it all.
Quality of the fish is just phenomenal. I was telling a bunch of people that when you start with a premium product, you end with a premium product. You don't even have to do that much to it.
This is locally caught fish, sustainably caught by hook and line, one at a time, of young fish that are super high in omega-3s and an excellent source of protein.
And the next slide, please.
The fleet.
This one is just showing a couple photos showing the Oregon Salmon Fleet in action. Excuse me, next slide. And these are just a few select projects. I won't go into all of them, but we've done advertising campaigns. One of the things we're really proud of, we have educational books that we created with the Trawl Commission and the Crab Commission that are targeted to 4th graders. So those are available and they're really phenomenal. They were created maybe 6 years ago now, and they're still used pretty heavily today. So that's something that we love, reaching that next generation. Then we've done some media tours. We have scholarships that we do. We have educational displays. If you're down in Charleston ever at the Oregon Institute of Marine Biology, that's a great one. Also in Newport at the Pacific Maritime Heritage Museum. While you're there, if you get time to hop out, that's a fabulous museum that has an incredible display on all of our fisheries. And then we take part in a lot of events. We have a great brochure and one of the videos you just saw. So next slide. So a little bit about the albacore and salmon fishermen. As you heard Rick say in the video, they are independent business owners. They have this coastal cultural heritage, and many of them, as Crystal noted, are multi-generational. They fished, with their fathers and their grandfathers, and they're fishing with their kids. So it is the epitome of a small American business in 52 feet, as Rick said. Next slide. This is how they do it. They troll their lines out on the water, and that's brought onto the boat one at a time, and then iced or frozen at sea. And for albacore, they're both short trip boats and some longer range boats. Next slide. For salmon, they're also trolling, and they're also catching them one at a time. They're just going a little bit more at depth. Much of this fleet is an ice fleet, so many more short trip boats than long trip boats, but there are some salmon freezer boats as well. Next slide. A little bit of history. It's fished commercially off Oregon since 1929, jig boats and bait boats for albacore. Most of them 20 to 60 foot combination boats. And many of the albacore fishers are also salmon fishers, and many will do crab as well. So they'll do the crab season now, then they'll start up with salmon in the spring, and then move to albacore in the summer. There have been variable Oregon landings, as you heard from both of my colleagues. So since 1929, there was a low of 27,600 in 1936. And then a glory year, it looked like, in 1968, with a high of almost 38 million pounds caught. For the last decade for albacore, we've been just under 6 million pounds a year. Next slide. For salmon, fished commercially off Oregon a little bit longer than albacore, so since 1912. Troll boats, again, those 20 to 60 foot combination boats, many of the same boats as albacore. Variable landings, so highs near 4 million pounds back in 1925 to 41, and then in the years 42 to 50, it dropped down to a low of 1 million pounds, but then also in there it kind of ebbed and flowed back up to almost 3.5 million pounds in 1957. For the last decade, we have not been as fortunate. We're average landings just over 608,000 pounds. Next slide. As far as albacore landings, I know I won't read those all to you, but you can kind of see the message there is also variable landings. 2022, we had a really strong year. I think it was second highest pounds landed in the last, I think, 20 years. So really great season, but then unfortunately market economics means that 2023 wasn't as great of a season. It was a pretty poor season, in fact, because of that. So but in 2024, you'll see just under 5 million pounds, and that's just under our average. So kind of leveling out a little bit in 2024. And 73% of the catch was in two major ports, Newport and Charleston. Next slide. So as far as value, it's about 10% of the Oregon marine fish revenue. We typically rank between fourth or fifth for total revenues. You heard crabs say they're the highest, then groundfish, Pacific whiting, pink shrimp, and then albacore. And as far as ex-vessel value to fishermen, this year was about 8.2 million pounds. You see 2022 was that strong year I was telling you about, but really variable, really fluctuates. Next slide. For salmon landings, this is a 10-year average that was produced by ODF&W. Just grabbed her slide. So you can just see the number of salmon caught, the pounds landed, and then the ex-vessel value. Again, some really strong years, more, 10 years ago. We haven't had really strong years in a long time now. But the average, you see the 10-year average there at the bottom, 51,188 salmon caught. The pounds on that is just over 600,000 for an ex-vessel value of just over 4 million. And you see the 10-year percent of averages down there. So, and that's 2024. The value, about 5.8% for salmon of the Oregon's marine fish revenue. And we're typically seventh, so we fall in line. That goes albacore, then sablefish, then salmon. But salmon, I always like to say, is a really iconic species for Oregon. People think Oregon and they think salmon. It is one of those cultural and historical markers of our state. Next slide. Now, to get away from the stats a little and just talk a little bit about market forms. You can buy it whole, fresh or frozen off vessels. You can buy albacore loins, steaks, or medallions. Salmon typically sold in a fillet. Custom canning, and there's been a lot of, this is one bright spot for the industry. There has been a lot of micro canned or tinned, if you're using the trendy language now, the tinned fish craze. But it's exciting to watch all the custom canning going on. And there are at least 50 brands that I know of canned albacore in the market. So I love when I'm out and about looking in the grocery stores, in the fish markets, sometimes in like the Made in Oregon shops to, find something that's locally caught and canned in Oregon. Then there are the custom pouches, and those are both 2 pound and 4 pound on average. That's also been kind of an exciting opportunity for salmon and albacore fishermen is the custom pouching, and more going into schools and food service as more funds are available for schools to purchase local products. So that's been a bright spot for us. And then also value added, which is also fun. It's just fun to see what people are coming up with. And I've seen albacore bologna mock products and, smoked albacores and smoked salmons and different fish cake things. So people are always just trying to create more value for these products, both fishermen and processors. Next slide, please. I think this just shows, this is just one of my examples of some of the many micro canned products. And these are all albacore that you might see out there in the market. So I encourage everyone to keep an eye out for them. And then the right is a photo of a media event that we did. We really love getting media and social media influencers talking about all of our great Oregon products. And so this is Chef Mylene Chavez, and we wanted her to spotlight all these great micro cans that we have. So she created a dish that was actually served in the can, which was incredible and creative. So next slide. Yeah, so Crystal and Yelena talked about some of the big overarching issues. Obviously the escalating costs while the ex-vessel price remains the same is a real challenge. There aren't many industries that could survive with, increasing costs while the price that you're paid remains the same. There's also this graying of the fleet issue that is often talked about in media. Many of our current salmon and albacore fishermen are reaching retirement age. So we really need to create some economic opportunity to entice new entrants to the fleet. And then this consolidation among buyers and processors that we've heard about due to all of their escalating costs. And that really reduces market opportunity for the fleet. Finally, for salmon specifically, the fishery has been closed. You saw those numbers from the last 10 years, and the fishery has been closed a lot in those years. And so, Governor Kotek and Brown both supported disaster assistance relief, and the federal government has approved those. But the timeliness of those programs are really, really lengthy. We are still waiting on the 2018 to 2020 funds to be dispersed. And Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission who is the entity dispersing the funds, is saying it could possibly be another 4 years. So it could be, 10 years from this 2018 disaster that salmon fishermen are getting these disaster relief funds. So that's just really incredibly challenging. So that's on the salmon side. Next slide. For albacore, we really always talk at the commission about how we promote seafood as an agricultural product of Oregon. So that is something that we would welcome and appreciate continued help from the ODA. As Yelena mentioned, Eric Morris and Eric Garman have just both been incredible assets to our entities. So super grateful and thankful for them. And Eric Garman has done a lot on this promoting seafood as an agricultural product, but really that helped developing markets and being able to counter the cheaper imported seafood coming in is a high need for albacore. And then creating economic opportunity for those Oregon landed products, and then supporting the infrastructure needs, as we've heard with all the processor issues and the DEQ issues. Finally, commissioners asked if I would bring these last 2 points to your attention on fishing crew. So categorizing the fishing crews as agricultural workers would help lead to more opportunities for various funding. And then also we really need crew vetting, training, and healthcare programs. So we are working on that with various partners, but those are some key current issues for albacore. Next slide. Finally, I leave you with an invitation, how's that, to really just get out there and enjoy the incredible local products, local seafood products that we have. We've got smoked albacore and smoked salmon on a seacouterie board, as they're calling, the new charcuterie type displays. A tuna melt. We love saying that tuna is accessible, in something as introductory and easy as a tuna melt for people to make, and then you can get fancy with the loins and make high-end products that many Oregon chefs do. Down on the bottom, you see a salmon seafood dish from local ocean restaurant there in Newport, and then some albacore skewers on the right. So really invite you all to get out and enjoy all the amazing Oregon seafood products that we have. Next slide, and also invite you to join us on our Instagram and Facebook page for the Albacore Commission. Salmon, we don't have those, but we do have a great website. So there's our website and contact information, and really just invite you all to get out there and ask for it and enjoy it.
Well, thank you, Erica. I'm hungry. Let's go ahead. We've got, because I think we do have a reception and other people coming to the reception, so we will want to move over next door at 6:30. But we do have 15 minutes or so for Q&A. So I would open it up to the board for any questions you have of any of our three panelists.
I do. So I was unaware that the governor had kind of halted the offshore wind projects. So can you tell me what that process is going to look like moving forward with these three commissions?
I'm no longer directly hands-on involved as I was since 2019 up until 2023. That's pretty much what our commission was doing largely. That's how concerning it was. So my understanding moving forward, so the Governor Kotek requested Bureau of Ocean Energy Management to not go through with the lease, which was scheduled for October 15th. There was very limited interest. I believe there was only one wind developer out there willing to bid, and for auction, I believe you have to have a minimum of number. So basically, she asked to cancel the lease, withdraw from the BOEM, Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, Oregon Task Force, which is the vehicle that the federal government uses with the states, including Oregon. And so she asked to wait until Oregon roadmap effort is completed. It was, I can't recall which House bill it was, but it was passed by the Oregon legislature, basically mandating developing offshore wind roadmap. And so the Department of Land Conservation and Development is in charge of that effort. And they have monthly meetings with a round table. It's an advisory body that I believe has more than 50 participants from various walks of life. We have a number of fishing representatives participating there, including one of my commissioners, Carrie Silva. As I said, they're meeting monthly, and it's a very collaborative approach. Basically, DLCD is soliciting all the feedback to a long list of questions from the coastal residents and the stakeholders, other ocean users, and then there will be a report produced. And in 2025, I believe closer to fall, they will have to report back to the legislature on what they were able to come up with. My understanding that, well, hopefully, I guess it's my hope rather than understanding, is that that will work as, if not an alternative to the federal approach, because that one is failing. It was very well recognized by all people involved that that was not an appropriate to Oregon's value approach. I don't know if I was able to answer your question directly, but I did my best.
Other questions? I have one, Ela Miller for the record. So back to, and you all talked about DEQ. And a question I would have is, are we looking at federally mandated standards, or is it unique to Oregon? So is it a level playing field for processors and other seafood processors in other states, or is it unique to Oregon on the handling of standards and other issues?
Thank you for the question. My understanding, and as I said, I'm not directly involved, Lori Steele would be the best contact on that. On the details, she has the technical experts hired who work on the issue. But my understanding that it's, while there are standards coming from EPA, but then there is, every state has their own standards and interpretation. And Oregon, from what I've heard, Oregon is the only state with these types of requirements. No other state in the country has that level of expectations and requirements, which is a challenge.
Thank you. Yes.
I have a question from a board member on Zoom that I told her I would ask it because it's easier, from Ellie Norris. Her question was to Erica, why are fishermen not classified as agricultural workers? And can you talk a little bit more about, you mentioned that in your presentation.
Yeah, and I don't actually know the history or why they are not. I know there are certain, as Yelena mentioned, there are certain categories that we just don't fit under. So, you know, for example, we can't apply for the commodity, is it the Commodity Commission grants that ODA had, or the specialty crop block grants because we're not specialty crops. So I think it is just the way that we are categorized and classified, but I could certainly find out more about that. That was just something that came up in our last meeting that several folks said would be very helpful to have, is that classification.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Dean Simonich. Stacy Simonich for the record. Likewise, I was shocked to learn that it's taking so long to get disaster relief funds from the state. Can you say more about that and what the reasons for that have been?
Yeah, and to be clear, it's not from the state, it's federal disaster relief funds that for the Oregon salmon fishermen specifically. And I don't know why it's taking so long. It is a process that does not seem like it should take as long as it does. I do know that for the 2018 to 2020 funds, there was it fell under one federal process, and many people recognize that it was a flawed process, and so there is a new expedited process whereby Congress has already allocated funds for the more recent for the 2023 disasters, the most current disaster that a disaster has been declared. Governor Kotek requested it. The Department of Commerce said yes, a disaster is declared, but we are waiting for Congress, or we're not waiting for Congress to allocate funds on that one. Back to the 2018 to 2020. One of the big challenges for Pacific States that I have heard from Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission is that they are pretty low staffed and they are managing a record number of fisheries disasters. And so that's why they are saying it could take up to another 4 years once they receive it's a grant allocation. So once they receive, or it's termed a grant allocation, the grant allocation from NOAA, then Pacific State, and that is expected in January. Then Pacific States will be able to start working on the disbursement. But that's where they are saying it could take them 4 years. So that's an area that if anyone has ideas, it would be, we could really use some help getting those disaster funds dispersed to the salmon fishermen that experienced that disaster, in those 2018 to 2020 years.
With the permission. So there is my understanding within the federal disaster declaration, there are different levels of government involved, and every entity, including the National Marine Fisheries Service, has a timeline on when they're supposed to approve, disapprove. Well, one of the links, OMB, my recollection is Office of Management and Budget at the federal level, they don't have a timeline. So they that's where these, and we are not unique with salmon. Florida had several fisheries applying and also waiting for years to get. And so currently there's a piece of legislation that passed House of Representatives at the federal level that basically adds that little piece of information, 30 days. OMB will have 30 days to approve, disapprove the plan. And so that should hopefully address it. And from what I heard, Congress has an equivalent piece of legislation on the table.
And I will say that Senator Wyden's office has been incredibly helpful to the commission and salmon fishermen, really trying to expedite this process. And so hopefully, yeah, we are hopeful that the 2018 to 2020 will, it will be announced in January is the current expectation. And Pacific States is saying that would mean in March, maybe they could have applications ready for fishermen. So hopefully this process will move faster.
Any other questions?
Miguel Lopez for the record. Crystal, earlier you had spoken about whale entanglement issues and grant dollars for the fishermen to access and struggling with that. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
I'm sorry.
You had spoken about whale entanglement issues and grant dollars access to the fishermen. Can you speak to more of that?
So they have a requirement to have line marking their own specific color for the top 15 fathoms of their crab rope by 2029, 2026 for a certain length, and then 2029 for all of their gear. And so we're currently looking for grant funding to assist the fleet, but they don't know where to start looking. And so I'm trying to help them look, but I don't know, I don't know where they can start or how they can, and I've never done grants myself personally. So I'm looking for anybody that can help me help them to look for that. So ODF&W has been looking also for any assistance for them, but they've come up with nothing so far. Just that they have to change all their line, and some people just bought all new line that lasts 5 years, so it's going to be really tough.
So I think it was Jelena who talked a little bit about the need to expand domestic marketing. And so what avenues are you looking at to do that? I think ODA today committed to several booths at the Taste of the States announced a trade show in May in Chicago. That'll be a restaurant type show. And so I'm just curious about thinking about Oregon commodities that would make sense to be part of that.
Thank you. That's a very good question. So as I mentioned earlier, Positively Groundfish is our main vehicle for marketing work domestically. The organization is getting some grants from NOAA Fisheries and very busy work. Over COVID, focus was primarily on the social media because no events. And now there will be an entrepreneurship accelerator to basically attract entrepreneurs with a value-added products using the groundfish products. So that's our primarily area. We are looking, our commission is looking to do a trade show in Anaheim, the Expo West in 2026. Sounds like a very large event, something like 60,000 visitors. So not seafood specific, but we already did it in the past, including with ODA, with Business Oregon. I believe it was like a very successful event. So we're going to be doing that. We would like to do more events. Commissioners are very supportive of doing more trade shows. There's also the need for, publications and writing more about just how great our products are. In the grand scheme of things, there's only that many sustainable fisheries in the world, and we are among the top ones. So I don't think the industry overall, the fishing industry, is getting enough credit for that. And again, hard to compete on price. And at the end of the day, in a tough economy, consumers looking what's cheaper and not necessarily what's most sustainable or most cleanest or what have you. It's a challenge.
What event are you guys were you talking about doing?
So it's called Taste of the States. It's a National Association of State Departments of Agriculture trade show. And there are two of them, one in Chicago and one in Miami. The one in Chicago is in May. And like I said, visit with Lindsay because she was buying booth space today.
All right, well, I want to give
Could I also, sorry, I had my hand raised. I don't know if it's Erica online.
Okay, sorry, go ahead, Erica.
Sorry, with permission. Just wanted to say one more thing from a historical note. Maybe 15 years ago, I don't know if anyone else in the room has historical knowledge, but the state did a really wonderful promotion and marketing campaign, and they actually hired an ad agency to create ads and promotions and PR materials, working with a lot of writers that was kind of, celebrating the best of Oregon. I can't remember what the campaign was called, but there were billboards. It was fabulous, and it really spotlighted everything from potatoes to crab. So something like that would be, I don't think it's been done in 15 years. So that might be another just amazing thing that I loved seeing at that time and would love to see again.
Great. Well, thank you, Erica. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Crystal. This was very informative for us. So we are going to be adjourning the meeting for the day, and we'll reconvene tomorrow morning at 8:30, Wednesday, December 18th. For those joining remotely, please use the same Teams link to join the meeting tomorrow. We'd like everybody to join us next door in the Rainbow Room for an informal reception. We've been doing this the last couple of board meetings to bring in people from the community. We're pleased to welcome coastal agriculture, dairy, fishery representatives, local agricultural organization, local elected officials, and the entire slate of Oregon State FFA officers, and the CEO is going to be here. So anyway, meeting adjourned until tomorrow morning at 8:30.
Thank you. I did bring some crab pins for everyone.
Oh.
If I could pass them out before everybody leaves.